All right, welcome back to another episode of the Breadwinning Women's Show. I am so excited for our special guest today, Charreah Jackson, who is a world-renowned, writer and media personality. She has written an amazing book called Boss Bride that you should definitely check out. Today, she's going to be talking about her platform, Seen and Paid, and exactly how you can get paid, get booked and paid to speak and pitch media. So welcome to the show, Charreah.
Oh, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such my pleasure. So let's jump right in. I think that we are in a world right now where people feel like content is the name of the game, and probably have not been focusing their platform as much on the opportunities to speak and pitch media. So I would love for you to share, how important is it even nowadays really to be putting yourself out there in terms of getting booked on media and also getting speaking opportunities?
Yeah, I would say getting booked by media and being a speaker for large platforms only really matters if you want to make more money quicker. Only matters if you want to impact more lives with ease. And if you're somebody like, well, I think I want that, then absolutely. Because so often, to your point, we're in a time where you can create your own communities, which are phenomenal, create your own content, which are phenomenal. And then with media and large stage speaking, you get to leverage OPP, other people's people. And so often you're able to expand. I know it was the case for me. So this year is my 20th year consecutively being a professional content creator and being in the media field, in the space. And I've worked from spending 10 years at the largest magazine publisher, being a senior editor for Essence, to, as you shared, launching my own book and producing my own book tour nationally, which I was on Sway, Steve Harvey's show. I've been visited The Real, CNN. So I understand someone who's been both inside the media game, where I've been booking talent for years for Essence as a senior editor, also for live events like Essence Festival, where we're booking stages and I'm producing live events for the brand. And so I can tell you internally what people are looking for. And then I've been on the other side pitching and booking myself as a speaker, author, and coach.
Love it. So let's help some ladies out today that are looking to get started in getting out there and being on, I love what you said, OPP, other people's platforms, getting in front of other people's people. So how can we help them to get started? So what are 3 things, for example, that they might need to have in place before they can really start getting those speaking and media opportunities?
Absolutely. The first critical 3 factors are authority, expectations, assets. And inside of our Seen and Paid success system, those are the first 3 sessions and pillars we build on. So that authority is, are you ready to stop playing like you aren't as incredible and impactful as you are? So by the time someone gets to me, they're usually frustrated. Most of the clients who I've worked with got a little bit of frustration. And that frustration is because it's the wild, wild west on the World Wide Web, where anybody can say, oh, I'm an expert in X. And so you see people who have a fraction of your expertise who seem to be everywhere. And it's because they're pitching themselves for bigger platforms. They're pitching themselves for media and speaking. So you see they're leveraging media and leveraging their own media with their social media platforms. And so what we help our clients do is really own the authority that absolutely you should let all the years of hard work you've put in, what would it feel like to let that hard work for you? And so that's the first thing, is I need you to become unapologetic about how incredible you are and how massive your insight is. And so we work with our clients to get clear about that and then organize that bigness of who they are into your signature organized pillars, into what we call our SOAR strategy, where you're able to really organize your content. And so that's the really piece. I see most people want to jump right to pitching when they really haven't owned their authority, when they really haven't raised their expectations. And so I'm someone who says, go top of the market. one of the reasons I enjoy an incredible life is that I go top of the market. I work with the biggest, best brands, right? I'm not afraid to pitch the biggest and best. And I want you to know, as an editor who was in-house, often I might be someone's first big story. I remember a woman, I was her first national interview that she'd ever done. That one interview had open doors from Essence to the Dr. Oz show, to the Today Show, to all these other platforms, because she just showed up at one big outlet. So do not be afraid to break in at the top, is what I would say. So after you own your authority, expand your expectation, that next big nut is definitely, or big nugget would be definitely to organize your assets. And so often people will see me, hey, I saw you speak at TD Jake's store conference. I saw you speak at Steve Harvey's Vault conference. How did you get there? How can I get booked more? And I often say, well, tell me about your signature keynotes. Oh, I got to have something to say? Yes. Let me read your bio. What are your talking points? And so that's one of the things I would say, take the time to really distill out, what do you want to be known for? What is yours? If you could be booked by your dream stage, so many of my clients, they say Oprah, Oprah, Oprah. And I look forward to, if that's on your list, I would say this to you. I look forward to Oprah meeting you. And I often will tell the story of how the first time I was in a room with Oprah Winfrey, in a cocktail party, less than 200 people, she was standing imagine her standing in front of you, and I walked right towards her and then took a left and went right out of the door and went to the next event. Because even though I was in the room with her, I didn't necessarily feel worthy of meeting her. But the good thing about me is you only catch me slipping once. And so once that happened, I said, wow, I had to shake out what was the belief blocking me from feeling that worthiness and recommit to my goal. And so that was in 2016. In 2017, I entered the year with a very clear goal, 2 words, meet Oprah. And within a few months, I was intentional, and I just gotta say, I dreamed big. I expanded my expectation, the same what I'm telling and sharing here. And fast forward to, I met her in May of that year for the first time. But I have to tell you, I only say that in this moment because I was so focused on the fact that I wanted to meet her. It never occurred to me that it was going to be a blessing for her to meet me. And so good. Anyone who's a part of owning that authority, expanding expectation, is like, who's waiting for you to show up and be incredible? And I know when Oprah met me, she said, wow, you were luminous. And I look forward to hearing for everyone who's listening, if Oprah is on your list, or the Oprah shows on your list, on Network Super Soul Sunday or any of her shows, then what are you planning to say when you get there? And what will she say about you when she meets you? So that's part of the power of saying, let me take some time to organize my assets and take some time to really distill out what's my signature story, what makes me dynamic, and how do I share that succinctly with the world.
I love that, Charreah. You said something that really, really stood out to me, which was about going for these bigger opportunities. Now, I know, women owners, they definitely have, some imposter syndrome when it comes to being more visible and going for those bigger opportunities. So what would you say is something that someone could do? Like, how do you counsel your clients in terms of getting over that fear of putting themselves out there on those bigger platforms?
Absolutely. So I definitely I understand the fear is real. I just literally got off the call with a client before I got on this call with you. And I would say, analyze your fear. Like, talk back to your fear. I talk back to my fear all the time. So what part of, and especially for people, because once you encounter someone like me, I say this to all my clients, the next level is knocking if you encounter me, which also means if the next level is knocking at your door, your knees are probably knocking under the table with a little bit of fear. And so I would say, when that shows up, first, honor the fact that you are trying something new. And I would say, inside of that, interrogate it and say, what part of it makes it scary? For a lot of my clients, when we talk about bigger stages, growing their platforms, there's a lot of fear around, will I be accepted? A lot of them talk about, the trolls, like they have this these cloud of haters who are just waiting to descend the second they get on the Today Show, right? And so, we talk through that, and I share them, so many of my experience for our other clients. But more than anything, I would say that you will experience pain. You have the pain of discomfort from going for the big thing, the pain of discomfort from being disciplined, or you get to choose the pain of discomfort of regret. And so I just say, what's the worst that could happen is a few people who you don't know not liking you, or whatever that thing is, really to just still it down as far as what those big fears are. And when it comes to media and speaking, what I see is a lot of like, the biggest fear too, I would say, that is the easiest one to overcome, is people say, I don't know what to say. And that's when I'm like, well, you really haven't taken the time to organize your assets, right? To distill out those stories and to package yourself to be unapologetic. And so I would say, for someone who is feeling a little uncomfortable, first honor anytime you're feeling discomfort. When you're playing bigger, it's a good sign. If you are feeling completely comfortable, everything in your life, you playing small anyway, you're shrinking. So I would say that piece. And I would say another big thing that comes up, particularly in this area, most clients are concerned about getting it, quote unquote, right, which is a cute way of saying I need to be perfect. And I want you to know that I'm gonna bring the realness as someone who's spent a lot of time rehabbing myself from the pressure of perfectionism. And perfectionism is a cute word for unworthiness. I know, sis, I know. So you feel like actually you don't have to be perfect to get started. Actually, you're enough as you are, to really, if you find yourself, if that's the piece of like, oh, more people, then I would say do some work around those feelings of perfectionism, which is also a cute word of unworthiness.
Now, do you find that people who are just getting started in terms of pitching these bigger platforms, how are the media platforms that are bigger? So let's just take, for example, I know you've been on The Real, and sadly, their show is not going to be around anymore, but it was a great show. So when you're thinking about something like pitching something like that, what are they looking for in someone who may not already have been on Oprah's stage or
yeah. So the first thing is media is very formulaic. So that's why when you see a superhero movie and then you're like, they're doing another one, yes, because if it works once, they're doing it again. The same is true for film, the same is true for TV, the same is true for radio, the same is true for podcasts, the same is true for magazines, the same is true for broadcast. Okay. And so I would say that to say it's just study their format. So I just did a post. I went to the Sherry Shepherd show a few weeks ago, and I was just breaking down, here's her formula and here's how this show is different. So if they have a segment on that show specifically, I'd say that's called something around aging, but it's all around sort of profiling that aging can be sexy, right? And they love to have older guests. So if any of my clients who were 60 and over, I would automatically say, this is your show. So even, you mentioned The Real, which is great. So a show like The Real, you could see they did a lot of lifestyle content. They did a lot of celebrity focus. So say whatever your job was, if I were an attorney or a tax accountant, I would news hijack, and I would find a fun way to talk about, again, back to that authority piece. Once you become the authority and you own the bigness of your subject matter, then you really lean into what are the opportunities and story opportunities that the general public wants to know about. So often, to your point, we get caught in our little world of whatever our industry is, that we don't always give ourselves permission to think, what's the average everyday person want to know about what I know? Because everybody doesn't know the depth of information that I know. So it really is taking the time to study whatever your dream outlets are, to take the time to study. And so I encourage clients to have 20 or less, and 20 is a lot, target outlets. You don't need to be everywhere. And your ideal client isn't everywhere. So what are the 20 outlets that you love that also are in alignment with your expertise? And then sort of focus in. And then that's the largest. I would say really probably start with just 5. Maybe 3 broadcast shows. Kelly Clarkson's show, Jennifer Hudson has a show now, and really looking at the formulas, right? And the other thing is, every show you like might not have special guests. So if you look at how late night does guests and how daytime in the morning, it's completely different how their segments flow. And that's just on the broadcast side, right? So if you wanted to print a Wall Street Journal, a New York Times, a Fortune, a Forbes, you can really study and see. I just had a client who was in Forbes last week, and I had another client who I went to the Inc. 5000 conference with her, and we, organized an interview with her for Inc. Those interviews were very different. The reporters in the sections were very different. So most people, the biggest thing I would say about media is consider big media like buying a house, right? It's big. And as one of my clients said, and she's Irish, so she wrote in her testimony about working with us. She said she was featured in the New York Times as a result of us connecting, and she said, I have that outlet on my website forevermore. It's not Irish. I was like, oh, that just sounds really cool. And she is forevermore. I was like, okay, girl. But that's the truth. Like once that's the power of big media is forever. She can say the New York Times said this about me. Forever for me. When Redbook named my book one of the top books for women, when Black Enterprise said it's one of the best career books for Black women, right? Forevermore, I can say that. And so that's the power of big media. But also because of that, you don't need to be in a rush to have 501. If you just got 3 big hits this year, that's major. And so I would say give yourself permission to study the brands you do want to be affiliated with, or have someone on your team who gives you that insight, and then really be okay to customize your pitches towards some of the things. So earlier this year, another one, Tamron Hall, I just had a client and friend and coach of mine, Lisa Nichols. She got married earlier this year. I was helping her get media around her marriage. And one of the places I pitched was Tamron Hall, right? Tamron Hall loves family shows. She loves family and relationship content. So you just kind of study. If you look at a few episodes, look at a week of those shows, and you'll start to see trends, and you'll start to see the types of content they feature.
Okay. So you really want to tap into whatever the show's format, looking at, are they talking about aging? Are they talking about lifestyle? Are they talking about business? And then kind of get in where you can fit in. Yeah, and
it doesn't mean you can't pitch all of them. It's just you have a higher likelihood when they're already doing a lot of content in that category, that it's something that they're passionate about. So it's not saying you can't pitch elsewhere, but it's just saying the lowest hanging fruit is a place that seems to like what you do.
Yeah. So if a person is doing this, I mean, is it fine if do you recommend, because I know a lot of people, and I've had this conversation with women in the community who feel like, I shouldn't be doing this yet because I don't have anybody to pitch me. They're not at the level yet where they're ready to, retain a Charreah to be able to pitch them for their business. What would you say to somebody who feels like they need, even an assistant or somebody? Like, is there anything wrong with seeing that business owner's name come across the inbox as someone who's pitching themselves for an opportunity?
Absolutely not. As far as help, get help. And a lot of times, so just to give some clarity around my expertise and my genius and how it fits in the landscape, often I'll say a publicist, imagine a baseball field. And, you want to get your brand coverage, right? You want to get your brand bigger placement, bigger notoriety. A publicist is like a pitcher who walks to the pitcher's mound, takes your product, your service, your launch, your Breadwinning Women podcast as their ball, and they throw it to their media contacts to get you a hit. I come in as somebody who played 20 years on the other team. So I come in giving my clients the real game of like, here's what actually they're planning and how they're thinking on the other side. Because sometimes what you care about isn't what they care about. And you know what? Sometimes you're mad at the pitcher that you hire and you gave them a bag of feathers and it just was never going to get to them. So it's also about creating a stronger ball so that it lands quicker. And so I say that to say you cannot outsource owning your authority. There's certain parts of this process that you absolutely can get support. And what I find is the same people who often say, hey, can you connect me with the speaker manager? And I'm like, okay, send me your speaker stuff. Send me your speaker reel. Let me see your speaker deck. What's your speaking topics? And they're like, huh? And it's like, you haven't given them anything to throw. And so you still that foundational work for every breadwinning woman out here who's listening. It is so important. That's your part, that's your special sauce that either you can hire someone like me who's specializes in helping you organize that, or taking that time to do it. But it's worth it because you've spent years on all the other parts of your expertise. You spent thousands on getting this business going. You've invested so much. So doesn't the legacy and the message of what you're up to deserve a little bit of time and attention? And so that's what I say to anyone who's listening. And even for me and our client, we train assistants and PR managers. So a lot of my clients are publicists themselves who hire us to help them sharpen their messaging and sharpen their packaging of their clients. And so absolutely, I'm all about support. And I work with people who are supporting powerful executives and entrepreneurs to get out there. But there are parts of it that only you as the messenger can do. And if you create strong pitches, if you take the time to develop a stronger bio, stronger stories, it's much easier for those people on your team. And I do it. I don't do all my pitching anymore, but I had to train my managers to be able to do it and say, here's the cadence, here's what we have. So you absolutely can outsource it once you do the foundation work.
Love that. Charreah, tell us about how to, because I imagine, right, with a lot of media outlets, and I've done some TV before, and people are getting tons of pitches on a daily basis. So how do you get opened, right? Like in today's email world, right, when people are, getting inundated with emails, how do they get their emails open and really stand out in the sea of email?
Leverage every word from your subject line. Most people, and never just hit reply, and I never just reply, read nothing. I give a fresh subject every time. I keep it juicy. So even in your subject line, so throw me a business that of a client you're working on, or someone you're like, hey, they might want more media. Give me a business or an expertise.
Let's just say they are a coach, a weight loss coach.
Okay. Weight loss coach. So, and have they themselves had the transformation, or and how many clients would you say they work with?
Yeah, so I'm actually thinking of a friend. She has had a transformation of losing a lot of pounds, probably maybe like 50 pounds or something like that. And she has gotten results for other people as well.
Mm-hmm. So I would say, I would keep it. So, okay, I wrote I would say for this, I would say, I would put picture. I would make it real newsy, like picture me 50 pounds ago, or I would do something personal like that. My jiggly arm says hi, or something personal where I would just really go for it. I would talk about I would be emotional. I'd make them curious to be like, what the hell is this? Let me open this up, right? When I wrote an article, my first article for the New York Times, I put in the subject line, what was under my bed was blocking love, right? Mm-hmm. And I had a feng shui coach come. She told me to clean outside under my bed. I found an ex t-shirt under there talking about I want new love. And I didn't even know I got a Joker t-shirt. Don't y'all judge me. Listen, it's grown over here. And I was like, listen, but it's like, and then, other thing I use when I use that story, I said I was crying in the kitchen, period. Right. So come in the middle of the story to make them like, wait, what? And then don't be afraid to follow up and do a fresh subject line. But if you're saying that's just from the jump, and then even from there, get to the point and be interesting. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I see people make when it comes to media is that they forget that there are real people just like you and I who are reading those pitches. They're just people you like. So we put these because we think of a big brand name, a CNN, a Forbes, a Fortune, an Oprah show, we forget it's real people who are behind the scenes. And if you want people to be interested, be interesting. It's just like dating. And you would need to be open and allow yourself to be seen. And so that's some of the work we do with Seen and Paid, because so often we want somebody else to see us when we're not willing to see ourselves. And the more I've given myself permission to own myself and see myself, it has continued to attract additional opportunity.
Is there something that you did in terms of your own personal work that allowed you to break through? Because I think people are afraid of like showing the full selves, or sometimes you're not even in touch with your full self. You know what I mean? Like you're showing up as half of yourself. So tell me more about like some of the things that you did to really let that inner glow like shine through in the various parts of your personality.
Yeah, I mean, definitely this is a work in progress, right? And this is an investment. You're looking at the biggest investment I've ever made. You're listening to the biggest investment I ever made. And often people will say to me, oh my gosh, you got good energy. And I'm like, yeah, I paid for it. I invested time. I invested the dollars. I've completed over $100,000 in professional and personal development. It shows. And so I'm unapologetic to say I've worked with tons of coaches. I just signed up for another program this Sunday, a $25,000 investment. I said, sign me up. And so often we want somebody else to quote unquote discover us. We want somebody else to invest in us and to see us. And I would tell you the best gift is when you see yourself. And so I would say for me, I can give you some of the names of trainings I've done. And the best part is for me, I've done Momentum Education out of New York. They have a virtual training. You can go to momentumeducation.com. I did personal development development there. It's all areas. I work with coaches like Sylvia High of Aiming High. I told you about Lisa Nichols, who's a friend and coach of mine. I've been in various business masterminds, but so much of it, what you're seeing is habits. It wasn't a one-off. So I had to really institute habits in my life that allowed me to give myself permission as a round, brown girl from Decatur, Georgia, as both of my parents' first job was picking cotton in South Carolina. And so that means I grew up in Baptist culture that was around be seen and not heard. Like nobody in my family worked in corporate. Nobody in my family went to New York to go into media. So I did not have a template for the woman you are listening to now. I had to be willing to give myself permission over and over again to outgrow the environments I came up in and to do it with love. And I know I'm jumping, but I thank you for this question because it's easy to look at this version of me and think I woke up like this. I did not. I had to work through my own unworthiness, my own feelings of I have to be perfect. That were a cute way of saying I'm not ready, I'm not enough. And that kept me stuck and stagnant. And so I would just say, keep showing up, listening to podcasts like this. I continue to saturate my mind with quality content that remind me of who I am. But I definitely have invested in coaching. And coaching and therapy is not one or the other, and Jesus, I do all of them. Okay.
Amen to that. Okay, love it. So let's talk a little bit before we wrap up on the speaking side of things. We talked a lot about paid media. Look at you getting so excited. So let's talk about the speaking side of things. And what have you seen that's working really well for people right now that are developing strong brands around professional speaking?
Yeah, so I would say everybody will have to, for any career you choose, being good at speaking will grow you tremendously as far as having success and results. The next level up is to be paid to be a speaker, which means I am identifying a professional skill, right? And I always say the difference between a hobby and a hustle is a check. And so if you're saying I want to be a professional speaker, means I want someone to pay me to speak and open my mouth. Now, when that comes to be, and most coaches will tell you in the speaking arena, there are four main types of speakers: inspirational, motivational, informational, and then transformational. And so you want to understand, if I do want to be a speaker, which type of speaker do I want to be? And what are the markets and events I want to attend? Now, one of the best things that helped my speaking career to get me to 5-figure speaking contracts was really going to more events, going to more conferences, and getting more comfortable talking to people. Because people think, I've stood in front of crowds of thousands of people, that you work your way there. I didn't start there. I first got up in front of rooms of 50 and rooms of 100 and rooms of 300 and rooms of 500 and rooms of 1,000. And so I would say, get started is one of the most critical parts, and own where you are strong and own where you want to grow. And it's the most important part for me that's been helpful is studying myself. listening to when I'm talking too fast so that I create what's your structure when you are excited and you do naturally speed up. How can you work on that to manage yourself? So in those moments, people still are able to get impact. And so I really studied great speakers, and then also understanding the business of speaking. So I also studied great speaking contracts, and I asked all my speaker friends, hey, can you let me see your contract? And I've learned so much to get a better contract for myself that better protects me. But absolutely, we're in a time of such major disruption. We need powerful people to step up and speak up. And so it's an incredible opportunity that is there. And I would say get started, but really it goes back to the first question earlier, your authority, your expectations, and your assets. So foundational for me, the more I've organized and refined my message, the bigger stages I've gotten as a speaker. And so many of my bigger platform opportunities, from TD Jakes conference to Steve Harvey's conference, I pitched them and I sent clear keynotes. And for both of those opportunities, they just picked a keynote out of my speaker's deck. And that's what I went on that stage and talked about. And so I would say, don't wait for the big dogs to come to your door, go knock, and don't be afraid to show up and send your stuff.
And how did you find those people? Like, when you're looking at a conference like a TD Jakes or a Steve Harvey conference, I mean, they're not the ones that are doing the work of planning and selecting speakers, right? Like, they got a staff of people. And how did you identify, who was the right person to actually send that pitch to?
So I leveraged who I did know to get to who I didn't know. And so for both, I would start, hey, and there are a couple of ways, right? So I knew people who knew people, and I asked people I know to connect me, and I stayed in touch. So you can definitely, by going, and also I had attended events for both in those communities before I spoke on those platforms. And so don't be, if you want to speak on a certain conference, you'll be much less nervous if you go to the conference as an attendee before you try to go speak. And so I would say, show up, go into really invest, and you can write it off as a business expense because you're in market research. And then another thing that a gangster thing, and usually I pay people for this tip, but I'll tell you, is that I know the speakers who are steps ahead of me who I want to one day be. So I have a list that my manager goes through, and she looks at, okay, here are the other speakers who mentor me. Where did they speak last year? And I study their speaking list. So we Google and study where they've already spoken, because we know those are events that pay. And then we pitch me for those events. I also I live in Atlanta. There's a lot of events here. We look at some of the larger venues here. We'll look at their calendar. We look probably about 2 to 3 months at close, because usually, within the last 90 days, a lot of conferences have firmed up speakers, but you can look and see what are some of the places you want to visit. I have a list of places I haven't visited that I want to go. And I look at events in those areas, and I Google my subject matter expertise and conferences in different cities. And I'll say, oh, I should pitch this conference. And I pitch. All they can say is no, but that's part of owning my authority, expanding my expectations, organizing my assets. And that's just the first half of our seen and paid system. But it's just, so if you just do those 3 things right, it will put you ahead of 90% of the market, because most people don't slow down enough to actually get grounded and build up.
So let's just talk about, before we close out, Charreah, about some routines around this, because I know busy women, they always feel like, oh, this sounds amazing, Charreah, but how am I going to do this? This is one more thing on my plate that I need to complete. And you mentioned habits earlier. So what are some of the habits or routines that you have in place to make sure that you're doing your pitching on a certain cadence, or how do you work that into your schedule while also running your business?
Yeah. And I want to first disrupt the thought that this is something else on your plate versus this is the type of thing. If you put a slice into your life, that you can buy your grandkids china. Like, what if we upgraded the entire plate? And by particularly for for the women and the service-based providers, a lot of who you support, wouldn't you like another 1,000 clients? Wouldn't you like to sell your courses, your programs to more people, to make more money, to have more help? And so it really takes that expansive thinking to give yourself
Love that
to
perspective.
see the
Yeah.
value in it. Because if you don't see the value in it, you won't make space. And if you don't see your worthiness and that there's actually a place for you in the speaking market, that there are places for you in the media game, then you'll play small and use time as an excuse when really this is something that can give you back more of your time when you do it effectively. And so I would say the first part, yes, absolutely, it is something to layer in. But for me, it's responsible. And I'm gonna be candid. It's irresponsible to be brilliant and to know you have insight and to keep it to yourself. It's selfish.
It sure is.
And so I'm calling, somebody said, oh, I'm ready to cut it off now, but it is. It absolutely is. And so I just say that to say, my conviction is what has me committed, but it does not run over my life. It feeds my life. I see very clearly. And I tag and look for those of you who are looking to expand, even for doing podcasts. A lot of my books were sold through podcasts, right? And so leaving lead magnets, I know so many, I can point to thousands of dollars in my business that simply came from speaking in media. And so that's part of it, is I want to remind this incredible community of the value of putting yourself out there to be seen by quality leads. But as far as from a time commitment and the habits piece, for me, if you do this foundational work, say you give yourself a week, say, okay, Charreah, this sounds like if I just focus, most of my clients within 21 days, they can really update and get their assets together at a higher level. And once you get those pitches tighter, your talking points tighter, you or someone else on your team can start that process of pitching you out more regularly. And I would say whatever the cadence is for you, the other thing I will add too is within this, you want to know your hot season, right? So different clients, different expertise have a hot season. We're entering, as we're recording, it's about to be Thanksgiving. And from Thanksgiving to February to Valentine's Day, this is the Super Bowl of love. So when I was relationships editor at Essence, I would be pitching hard with my book. I would be pitching hard from November until February, because I knew there were so many natural stories in the news world around, from the most number of engagements and the most number of breakups before the end of the year. And then so many things that were happening, the pressure people feel when they go home. And then come January, the first Sunday in January is always the highest amount of traffic on dating apps, because people come into a new year saying, this is the year I find love. And so I knew all those moments and say, what are y'all hearing? That's authority. Right? And inside of that, you'll know the cadence of your expertise and when the market is hungry to hear from you. And you can leverage those moments. To your earlier question around how do you book more media, you also know the natural opportunities where your expertise is most needed, whether it be from headlines or things happening in the news, but also just the annual calendar.
Is there a Super Bowl for business?
There is. Oh, you want all the secrets. She's like, you need to know. Listen, so and it's funny because, a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs, right? And then a lot of my clients are women. And then a lot of my clients are also Black women. And so, this year I was pitching content around Black women's equal pay day and different holidays, right? So and within business, what's your specialty? Sales, money, and so knowing what those cadences are, but more so than just from a business standpoint, for those who are entrepreneurs in specific, that's good. I'll work on that. I would say this, you also know the case. So with us, it's a lot of that business lingo, right? The biggest thing is always the cue it is. So it's halftime in the summer, you're halfway through the year. Then y'all know come September, October, everything's Q4, finish the year. So the conversations that your audience is having, and then going into New Year planning. And so for me, I'm integrative and holistic with my work. And so I see my clients holistically. And so, that's a good question. I think about visioning. I think about hiring. Is there a better time to hire? I don't know. So I'll have to work on that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Charreah, I want to wrap with the big question, which is, what does it mean to you as a woman in business to, build, be a breadwinning woman, and be a woman who is supporting herself and thriving, as a business owner? What has that meant for you? And I love what you said too about from your background and what you came from. I mean, I'm sure your parents never imagined, right, all of the glorious things that you have accomplished over the years. And so what does it mean to you now? thriving.
And you know, it would be a disservice to you to start and not give you more context there, right? Because part of being my pride in being a breadwinning woman is because I have a great pride in the people I come from. So yeah, both of my parents started picking cotton in the cotton fields of South Carolina. And they both went on to get not just an undergraduate degree, but both of my parents had their master's degrees. Both of them had long careers in education. Both of them are retired. My mom from the school system, my dad from the CDC, where he was an education specialist. So where you start isn't where you stop. But also, if they went from cotton field to master's degree, then the conviction on me to say, well, what, I'm gonna flip my cute little suburban blurbing life into the next level, then absolutely I'm going for my 7-figure and beyond and 8-figure and beyond business. And so I would say for me, the pride of being a breadwinning woman is to know that I have the right to create the life I dream about. It's what I talk about in my book, Boss Bride. It's what we empower our clients around with Seen and Paid. It's to say, what does it look like to take radical control of my life, my finances, my business, and show up for myself and the world in the most impactful way possible. And you know, the little brown girl who used to sleep in her glasses because she wanted to see her dreams has grown up to create a successful business that has taken me around the world, that has my book in libraries in New Zealand and Australia, and I'm just getting started.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Charreah. This was amazing. I so appreciate having you on the show, and it has been my honor and pleasure to talk with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. This was fun.